Good morning. So I guess we'll start out with the introductions. This is our first attempt at a virtual Ag in the Classroom workshop, and I can speak on behalf, I think, of my colleagues that we are inquiry-based, hands-on teachers, and so this is we're going to take a stab at it. So our apologies off the bat if it's a little rough, but we're just used to in person, getting our hands dirty. In fact, my principal or my custodian thought that we were having an in person workshop, and there's a huge garbage can that's sitting right next to me because he knows we make a mess. So just bear with us. This is our first stab. We appreciate any feedback. We appreciate just give us a lot of grace today, and we just hope that you come away with a few activities that you can either do virtually or do in person with your students. But I am honored to be principal of South Knoxville Elementary in Knox County, Tennessee. I live on a small 30-acre farm. We have beef cattle, and I grew up on a huge tobacco farm and beef cattle farm. And those of y'all that know about tobacco farming, as a kid, it was one of the hardest things. I couldn't stand it. I told my parents I'd never live on a farm. I hated gardening. I hated all that stuff as a 7 or 8 year old. And so now what do we have? Gardens. I've made all kinds of jellies this summer, and we do not raise tobacco anymore because of the government bought out those leases. But we do still raise cattle, and I couldn't think of any other place I'd rather be, especially during a pandemic, than on a farm, just breathing in that nice sunshine. We have 2 children. My husband and I have been married coming up on 30 years, and one child is in Florida, an art teacher trying to figure out the pandemic, and the other one is actually at the beach right now, but he's started his own company working with excavation. Farming has just been part of the fiber of my life since I've been born, and the reason I got into Ag in the Classroom is, to tell you the truth, I wanted to start a garden at my school and needed some help about 29 years ago. And a gentleman named Bobby Beats that is retired from Farm Bureau told me about this grant that was coming up. And so every year for 29 years, I have tried to find a school or the school I'm working in to partake in this grant. And this is the only grant that I know of that's a continuation grant. So the $500 is initial, and then it's $250 to continue your project. So we'll talk more about that as the day goes on, but I'm going to turn it over to JoAnn and Valerie, and yes, we'll be intertwining some of our personal anecdotes during the day, but I'll turn it over to you 2 wonderful ladies.
Hi, I'm JoAnn Maupin. We're so glad to have all of y'all with us today. Just to kind of reiterate what Ms. Tanna said, and my husband and I farm 2,500 acres over in West Tennessee, and we love it. We love everything about it, and we have beef cattle. And so, yes, this pandemic, the world's upside down right now, but I agree with Tanna. The farm is a great place to be during all of this. So it is our hope and prayer that we give you guys some resources to take back in the classroom, whether you are able to do them in the classroom, which is a hope and prayer, or if it is virtually. And we're going to hopefully provide you some online resources to pass on to your students and things to kind of continue their growing their minds and educating them about agriculture. So thank you for being with us today.
So I'd like to reiterate what they said and let you know that I grew up on a farm as well, so I have a lot of farming background. My husband and I were married in 2006, and at that time, my husband's family row cropped. They also did hay, and they ran a dairy. And in 2011, sadly, we closed the doors to the dairy, but we still have our heart with our dairy cattle. Our kids still show dairy cows. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready for a show with masks, so we'll see how that goes. It's going to be hot, but I'm excited about that. I was a classroom teacher for 10 years before I went to the library, and I feel like I've got the best of both worlds. I'm still teaching kids, but I'm able to also have more leeway when it comes to Ag in the Classroom. I feel like I can really reach the kids. You know, we've had a big push for STEM lately, and with being a librarian, I have more opportunities to do that. So Ag in the Classroom is a great way to incorporate the STEM activities.
Just for a few seconds, tell us, I see Brenda Baker on there. Hi, Brenda. Tell us just what grade level you all teach. That will help us to better sort of acclimate the standards and because we have some, I think we have some really great activities, and but it would help us with some of the scientific language. If you don't mind to unmute Mandy and just tell us if you teach or a little bit about yourself.
I'm third grade at Wattsburg in Hamilton County. I'm actually not teaching science, but I can incorporate a lot of this into social studies, which I teach. That's about it. Third grade.
Perfect. What about you, Lacey?
I actually am the center manager at UT Extension's Tidework 4-H Center here in Crossville. We run a summer camp program for 4th through 8th grade, any kids really. But we also have an outdoor education STEM-based program that schools come to our center for, field trips, overnight events. So we actually teach anywhere from kindergarten through 12th grade. So, but 4th through 6th grade is typically where our schools right now are coming from. So that's why I chose 3rd through 5th right now.
Excellent. Erin?
Hi, I'm in Shelby County. I teach 3rd grade science and social studies, and I manage our school garden.
Excellent. Hey, Miss Brenda.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the state chairman for the Women's Leadership Committee. So we are very involved with Ag in the Classroom, all grades, trying to get new resources for all you wonderful teachers to use, share with all the schools in my area. I have a daughter who teaches 5th and 6th grade math. I have a daughter-in-law who, bless her heart, is a kindergarten teacher. So I make school visits myself, but I just wanted to sit in today, and this is one group of grades that I usually don't sit in on. I usually do the high school or the pre-K through 2nd grade. So I thought, today I'm going to do 3rd through 5th.
Velma?
I'm in Maupin County, West Tennessee. We farm about 3,000 acres, corn and soybeans. Over the years, have farmed lots of things, but live on a farm, as everyone has said, a wonderful place to be during this unusual time. I'm going to put it that way, unusual time. But good morning to everybody.
Before we go to Velma, when I said 30 acres and around our area, and I live in Granger County and work in Knox County, that's a pretty big farm set, but West Tennessee has it going on, I'm just going to say 3,000, so it's a baby farm. We have a baby farm. Velma, what about you?
Okay. I'm in Sullivan County, and I grew up on a dairy farm, and we've since shut that down, and we raise beef cattle and hay now, and me and my husband run it, and of course our kids, they work, but they're also there helping us, and we've got grandkids in the school system, and I'm not a teacher myself. My husband taught for several years, but we have grandkids coming up in the schools, and I'm just, and of course my husband is president of the Sullivan County Farm Bureau, and we just want to get, keep the agriculture alive in the schools and let them know what's going on. We also have a corn maze, and in the fall, we always have school groups that come out and, they tour the farms and do everything. And so, it's just a need that's there, and, and the teachers are very receptive of it. So I just want to be able to have more information to give to the teachers. So.
Excellent. What about you, Christy Lawson?
I am from Hamlin County. I have taught 3rd through 6th grade math and science, and this year I'm the math and science coach for our school at West Elementary, grades K through 5. So I'm excited because math and science are my thing. I've got some baby chicks over here in my living room in a cage right now that we're raising. And we only have about 5 acres here, but I was raised on a 100-acre farm in Jefferson County. So I'm used to farming and everything, and it's my love language to do science and math.
Mine too. Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm an 8th grader, and I teach a 4-H project group of 4th and 5th graders. I show Hereford and Simmental cattle, and I grew up on a 600-acre farm.
Excellent. Excellent. Glad to have you. My husband was a big 4-H'er, and his claim to fame evidently was like judging eggs, and he always like brings in the eggs, and it's his thing. I guess it's his jam is to judge those eggs and do all that stuff. So maybe I'll have him on someday, Chris. Kendall, what about you? You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kendall. I am the special programs intern for Farm Bureau this summer. So I'm just on here to help out with all of the questions in the chat and answer those and just be here to have fun today. So
we're so thankful for our interns. They are fabulous, top notch. This is our first shot at this, and we want to make sure that that everyone enjoys themselves. No questions are silly. If you are seeing something that you're like, what, where would you get that at? Please put it in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can ask. We're very informal. And I probably don't know the answer, but I'm sure JoAnn or Valerie does. So we all love science. Even though I'm a principal, I'm on the state science committee, and just science has been my jam and my love language for as long as I know. But there's so many connections to this. With ELA and mathematics and social studies and even health and safety, and even our curriculum around Maslow's needs. And no time in our history have we ever need to come back to school and make sure our kids feel safe and loved, and some of these activities just really lend themselves to some of those things. I do have a funny before we get started on some of our activities. And my husband has a horrible sense of humor. And so we always eat local, and we'll talk about eating local with Ag in the Classroom. And I know Chris is going to die to have one of these signs. I'll get one made for you, Chris. But my husband also likes The Walking Dead. So he wanted to hang this up on our farm. I'm like, seriously? No. So that is my ha-ha funny for the day. We own a sign company, so he's always making crazy signs. So I think, ladies, Valerie and JoAnn, are we going to go through our tubs? Is that our first order of business? Valerie, you want to kick us off, and then I can just jump in and just whatever.
So in your tubs, you'll have to excuse us if they're a little different. This is the one from the home office. You should have some papers at the front. And on those papers, it's an inventory for what you should have in your tub. Forgive me, it's backwards. So it has quite a long list of materials. There's kind of endless possibilities for those materials, and hopefully throughout our day today with you guys, we'll give you some ideas that will encourage you to incorporate those in some way to your classroom. So you have quite a few papers at the beginning. I kind of save those for last. If that's all right, Tanna, we'll do that. And oftentimes you'll see in your tub, there is an educator's guide for a book. These are accurate ag books, and the accurate ag books are published with information that's correct. Now, as a librarian, I have quite a few favorite books that are not accurate. For example, does anyone know the Otis books? So Otis is a tractor, and it talks about character traits that you're really excited about, such as dependability, being brave, lots of other character traits. But Otis is a tractor that is able to drive himself around. That is not obviously an accurate ag book. So when we are working with our tubs, every book in here is going to be an accurate ag book. So the information is correct. It's based on fact and science. And then it's sometimes also based on a moment in history. So for example, this is full of beans. Henry Ford grows a car. You have an educator guide and the book itself. And so with this book, it's based off of Henry Ford and has a lot of information in there that you might not know about Henry Ford. Now, I will say the Lexile level on it is probably in the 800s. I'd have to double check that for sure, 8 to 900. It has a lot of information. So has the history of how Henry Ford came to be, but it's probably not the path that you thought it would be. And if I'm not correct, I think I'm correct in saying that this is this year's book. They have a book every year that is chosen, and this is the book of the year. So every year, I would suggest that you add to your agriculture library because you can do so much with them. When inside the educator guide, you have, just turn to a specific page, I guess, and it has a map in here. So you have a geography tie-in to it as well. There's comprehension. It also starts with your objective, just like you would have for any type of lesson planner. So all the things is
I
in
can't
there.
hear you. I can't hear you.
The next two that I have in my list are the Levi's Lost Calf and Can Do Cow Kits. Again, accurate ag books, and they're based. I think one of them, Can Do Cow Kits, was put out by the Beef Council, and it has information about how they work on their ranch or farm and have how they grow their beef. And then the Levi's Lost Calf is, again, based upon what they do on their farm and ranch. And I will say I actually have met the author of this book. She's a tremendous lady, and those are great tie-ins as well. And am I doing okay? You have anything to add?
Yeah, I have such respect for media specialist librarians. I will tell you, that's why I'm in this library. They rock. They can add so much to support what you're doing in your classrooms. And I know my librarian is. We have a STEM component to our school now, and that's been awesome. But these books, she actually, and now I have a male librarian. They actually go ahead and buy multiple copies whenever they find out what the ag book of the year is, and they go ahead and put them in the library because that's how they love the accuracy. And then the Lexile levels are sometimes a little challenging, which is great for those kids that are higher functioning. But one of my favorites is this one. It was one of the books that we received at the national conference, Farmer George Plants a Nation, and I just love Peggy. Peggy Thomas. A few years ago, I did a huge thing on Thomas Jefferson and did some heirloom planting from Monticello in our gardens at another school I was at, and it warranted a visit to the White House because the First Lady caught her eye, and Chris Fleming was almost put in jail. But that's another story to tell. But any of these books that you can relate to, and you can see the correlation to social studies, talking about, especially in 4th and 5th grade, those social studies standards. Our social studies supervisor has definitely piqued her interest in how we can correlate and coordinate some of these standards into good literature. So I love that Valerie has that expertise, and I'm sure she has some more great books to share as well.
Yeah, I do. And just a guilty plug for librarians, make friends with your librarians. I feel like in my school, it depends on the grade level, but I feel like I'm underutilized in some and utilized in others because I can extend your lessons. I can add more information. I can do the research aspect of it. So just reach out to your librarian and make friends with them. You know, when I started teaching, they said, make friends with the secretary and make friends with your janitor, because they are going to be your best friends. And that's true, but also make friends with your librarian. So to continue on, this is a new one in the buckets this year. It's called Tales from a Dairy Godmother. So it has that twisted fairy tale aspect of it, but it also has accurate information about where ice cream comes from, and really talks about kind of a problem and solution, so that kind of extends some lessons that way. There's also an educator's guide in there. Now you'll find as we do our activities in a bit that we like to eat when we do our activities. Now you have to worry about you know, allergies and that such a thing, but you need to also consider the fact that these kids love to eat. So there is actually a link to how to find your ice cream recipe, and you can make it in your classroom. The kids are so excited about that. There's also in your tubs as well, you also have alphabet soup activities, and there is an ice cream recipe in there as well. So we're going to do a couple of activities through here anyway. This is going to be your probably your most used from your tub, because it's a great resource for you to look for activities to extend lessons. So Tales of a Dairy Godmother. And I guess too, because dairy is such near and dear to my heart, that this one really kind of speaks to me. Next one is Where Does the Yellow Corn Grow? And this was actually written by dear friends of mine, Nick and April Patterson. And in the beginning, this book was printed with their own money. So their picture's actually in the back, and Farm Bureau picked up on that and helped them out, started printing books as well to be ag, because it's now considered an accurate ag book. And it talks about the process of corn growing on a farm. So if you talk about life cycles, you can incorporate it as a literary aspect. So it starts with how they plant, it goes all the way through harvest, and gives quite a bit of information. Now the lexile on this is lower. You can kind of look at the text and see that the lexile is not going to be as high as some of the other ones. Also have the Bee Man, and then there is another, in your tub, there's another bee aspect to it. Pollinators are such an important part to agriculture. You have the honey files, and it's a bee's life. There's quite a few activities in there. So if anything you need to do on pollinators, you can add that in. And there is a, Kendall, did you say that the farm brand is? Mm-hmm. It is. Okay. So in your tub, sorry, it's very hard to do your tub inventory. It's odd for us. So in your tub as well is a Farm Friends, and you can, first of all, it is organized by county, so you can find some contacts within your county to reach out to if you're wanting to, maybe you're having a career day, or maybe you're doing a lesson over pollinators. You can see if there is a person that has that background and you can contact. If there is not somebody in your county that has that contact, you can also look it through other counties, and I can pretty well guarantee that they would help you out in some way. Maybe point you in the right direction with someone in your county, or maybe they can just help you out. So Farm Friends is a great way for you to make a contact in your community, because if we can get community buy-in, we also are going to help our school as well. So Farm Friends is a great way to make those contacts. Who Grew My Soup was printed by the Campbell's Company, or they paid for the printing of it. and it talks about how the different vegetables are grown for your soup. So he says, I'll eat it. Yes, I'll happily do it as soon as you're able to tell me who grew it. So if we can help kids understand where their food comes from, they're going to be more willing to try it. If they grow it themselves, you would be so surprised the things that they will try if they grow it themselves. And this is kind of the story of a boy that's just not happy with his soup. And then, of course, at the end, it talks about how he loves his soup because he figured out where it all came from. Tanna, do you have anything to add so far?
Yeah, this is a great book too, especially in the fall when the fall garden plants are coming in. A lot of times we work with our cafeteria manager and we use a crock pot and we make our own soup. But Valerie is so right. We have a really active gardening program at the school, and they every Tuesday there is a lady from the local gardening club. She comes out and works with the kids that are here for Boys and Girls Club this summer in that garden, and they get to take home the produce. So now tomatoes are coming in, and cucumbers. I've been worlds of those, and so it's remarkable to see these kids try things, beets that they've never ever experienced. And so I encourage you also to form a relationship with your cafeteria manager at your school because they can help. If they know ahead of time, they can help you prepare for samplings through the nutrition department, at least in our district. Sometimes we can do some exotic fruits like kiwi and some things that maybe white radishes that never thought of before, but it takes some additional planning. But your nutrition and food services are such an asset in the cafeteria manager definitely can help you to procure some of those, exotic fruits and vegetables. So just so many things. I know there is a really cool, it's called a teacher resource guide. And it just gives you all kinds of materials for pre-K through 12th grade. So I know most of y'all are either teaching 3rd through 5th, but some of my favorite activities, are the lower grades. And Valerie mentioned the alphabet soup. This is sort of like if I had to pick one resource to take with me to do a workshop, it would be this one. And it was actually designed early on for pre-K kindergarten teachers. And but I've used it for my church group, adult church class. I've used it in Bible school. I've used it. We've used it all over the country, to tell you the truth. And people love this. It's free. And so that's in your tub. I encourage you, share it. Some really great extensions and some really good. The thing I like about this particular resource is it gives you the talking points, and it gives you some of the extensions and the connections. And it's just a timeless piece that I feel like that it's just every school should have a copy of this, at least one copy of it. And one thing that I like to use and play a game with the kids and adults is this is Ag Facts. It's a for those librarians and lovers of books. It's a great bookmark, and it's pretty good materials. It's enough for a class set that comes shrink wrapped in your container. And so it gives you the commodity list on the back for our state. And it is hilarious because it changes, statistics change, data is not static. And so it's remarkable to hear the kids whenever we ask what they think. First of all, we have to tell them what a commodity is. And second of all, what is grown in Tennessee? And Tennessee is a very different region. East Tennessee, where I live at, we do not grow cotton. And so the East Tennessee kids do not know what cotton looks like growing. And, so different, we have 3 distinct regions in Tennessee with 3 distinct climates. And it's interesting to hear kids tell you what they think the number one commodity is and where they think that chocolate milk comes from. And that's a story we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay, so there are several posters as well. And when you're talking about the nutrients that plants need, a great way to tie it in is talking about aquaponics lesson, which we will be doing later. And they have several. This one is about potassium, and they're large, so I'm not going to unfold it. But it has nutrients for life. So it talks about the necessities of plants and how they grow to their capacity and what they need to do that. So those are some great resources for you as well. Several people in the main meeting space were asking about the apple. In your tub, you actually have a poster that is titled, "Can a single apple slice feed the world?" And that's a great resource. And we're going to talk about, when we talk about aquaponics in a bit, we're going to talk about why that single slice is so important. I know Chris talked about it a bit, but there's that resource for you in your tub already. And then the last nutrient, it talks about how do plants grow, and it's kind of a more of a simplified version of all the others. Like there's a potassium, there's a nitrogen, and different types of nutrients there. Also have a card for, one side says Journey 2050 and another one is Farmers 2050. The Farmers 2050 is more of a game, kind of like Farmville off of Facebook years ago. The Journey 2050 is more specifically for educators, and it talks about the population and why that is such an important aspect for everyone, because the year 2050 is the same distance away as 1990. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that just kind of puts it into perspective that the year 2050 is not that far from now. And so everyone needs to be concerned with growing food and where their food comes from and a healthy supply. And we are very lucky to live in a country that has the safest, most productive food supply in the world. So that just gives an idea. This Journey 2050 is a program that you can sign up for. I would say that it's definitely upper elementary, but it gives kids an idea of how things are planted and harvested. And then it also ties in the population and why that's important. Because if we don't educate the students of today about why it's important to feed the world, in the year 2050, it's going to be too late to start making changes. And so the Journey 2050 is one of those programs to help out with that.
There are definitely some resources about facts. And I think that's the other thing. I think as educators, it's very important for us to stay up to date and to have accurate information as we're talking to children, as we're talking to the parents, the community, because they're two really good resources. This one's put out by the co-op, and it specifically talks about simple answers to GMOs. And at least where I live at, and I live on a farm in Granger County, which not a lot of questions about where our food comes from in the area I live in, but in Knox County, I live the school that I am principal of is an urban school. It's in downtown Knoxville. I can see the University of Tennessee Neyland Stadium from my car rider line. So we are right on the Tennessee River. And I hear all the time, I'm not eating this because it's full of antibiotics. I'm not doing this because it's been genetically engineered, blah, blah, blah. So the children are listening to, sometimes misinformation. And we have to be careful and respectful of the parents that are sometimes misinformed as well. So that's why it's so important to have my toolbox full of, the facts about, because there are unrelated consequences to just saying you know what? We are so sick and tired of horses being taken to the glue factory. We're just going to outlaw that. Well, Chris can tell you there's a really good story about that kind of legislature and what it's done. I know for a fact we are near a cattle market where we a lot of times take our beef cattle, and my father and husband have to put locks on our cattle trailers because we get presents of horses a lot, and that's just, and they're broken down horses, and because they cannot be properly taken care of, we accumulated a huge horse that lived on our farm for 2 years, and we had to bury Susie, but she was gifted to us. So there are definitely unforeseen consequences. I don't know if you all are, buy beef. Beef is going out of control in the markets. There's a lot of discussion about, getting beef from other countries. And so my family, we grew up killing our own hogs and beef. And we have went back to that. So we do not grow pigs ourselves, but Jefferson County FFA kills their hogs, some of their hogs as a fundraiser for after they've raised them. And we have pork, and we are getting ready to have our beef processed next week. The processors are 8 to 10 months behind. There's so many people that have the same idea we do. But luckily we have a family friend that's going to take care of that for us. But just being educated. And even though I was raised on a farm and I feel like I know a lot about agriculture, there are parts of agriculture I do not know. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to stay up on it too, because you do not know when you're going to be asked a question or given some kind of misinformation. And I will tell you very quickly, don't laugh too loud or use the laugh emoji, but I grew up thinking that pineapples grew on trees. And yes, that is crazy. And I will admit it. Didn't figure it out until we went to Hawaii and went to the Dole plantation and were looking for the trees. And my husband didn't tell me that I was making a fool of myself. And I went up and asked the person that was the education director for Dole after I was bragging about working for Tennessee Farm Bureau. Sorry, Chris. And that's where the trees are at. It was their fire. And learned a lot about pineapples that day, and took it on the chin, and I will never forget that story. I know, Chris, I know, I'm sorry. You probably got multiple calls about that crazy woman. But it's a misconception I grew up with, and so nobody ever told me any different. Gilligan's Island, I thought those trees were not coconut trees. So I think of the misconceptions we have about kids thinking that their chocolate milk comes from a brown cow, and they grow up with that, and it's real life. So I tell that story to my kids every year because I want them to know that it's okay for adults to be wrong, and it's okay to fail, and we have to laugh about it. So just stay up to date on the facts, especially about pineapples.
Yeah, along with that, there's a book that says 9 billion changes everything. And I will say that the most recent projections is that it's actually going to be closer to 9.5 billion. Now with the virus that's been going on, there has been some question as to if parents will decide to have children in this culture. So that number could obviously change as well. But the estimate is that it's going to actually be more close to 9.5 billion. Now, yes, we have land available for them to go places, but if that land is available for them to go places, that means that something else has to move. I don't know about you, but the United States is doing a really great job of feeding its people and the world. But if these people have to go somewhere, most likely urban sprawl is going to continue to happen into the rural areas, and some of that farmland is going to go away. So land is not being made again. So that number changes everything, and it's a very important number for our students to understand, especially if you talk about place value. That's obviously a large number, but they need to understand that, because in their lifetime, that's going to be reality. There's also a Connecting to Agriculture book. Now this book is kind of on the higher end. It would be more towards middle school, but there are a few activities. There's career activity in there as well. So if you have a career week that you're wanting to talk about agriculture, there is a lesson in there as well. Like I said, though, it's more toward middle school. All right, a librarian guilty plug, is that down there? And backwards now, is the TEL. Those of you that don't know, if you live in the state of Tennessee, you have access to the Tennessee Electronic Library, and it has world books so they can do research, and it would be accurate information. There's so many ways that kids can research using the TEL. Don't forget about that resource, but because you live in Tennessee, it is free for you to use. When you log in, it may just ask for your zip code, and it will point you in the right direction. The Tennessee Ag Insider is put out by Farm Bureau, I believe, quarterly. And these are friends of ours. These are, well, the Beatty and then they live in Murfreesboro. And if you know about anything about urban sprawl, this family is living it. If you've ever been to Murfreesboro and shopped at the Avenue, then you will see that in the middle of all of the city, you will see a farm. You have a pick your own strawberry, sometimes there's sunflowers, sometimes there's pumpkins, and they have made a way to make it work for their family. But if you were to stand on their front porch and look around, you would see urban sprawl. And so the Beatty family is a great representation of Tennessee agriculture and reaching their community. They've opened up like a general store that will also supply food to their community as well. So this is a great family to really look for. Inside, you also have other types of farmers. You have Tosh Farms. Tosh Farms grows pork, and they are the state's leading pork producers. And there's quite a bit of information in there for you to use.
I really like this resource on soil. And you know, a lot of your kids, they don't call soil. What do they call soil? Yeah, dirt and mud. And so it's really good. There's a really good resource about what the difference between dirt and soil is, and that Nutrients for Life is a great organization that will send you out free materials. I'm one of their ambassadors, and that means that I just volunteer to do some things for them in relationship to science. And they have lots of cool stuff and lots of free things, and I'm glad that we still have that in our kits. And then there are some really good things at Ag Today, and it's a really nice color brochure put out by USDA and the National Ag in the Classroom, and there's some really good historical things about George Washington Carver and people that have made a difference in ag and the innovators. And we actually used this resource during our STEM month, and also know that the 100-year Women's Suffrage Act is on, and so we looked specifically for women that were innovators in agriculture, and that was a great research project for our 4th and 5th graders. They actually did like a little wax museum on Market Square in Knoxville, and just sort of talked to the public about the innovators, and it's just a great way to do some research, and then with a little bit of an ag flair to it. The pyramid, the My Pyramid, is a resource that's in there, and during the time that we went to the White House, it was a plate, My Plate, and this is up for debate because I remember when the pyramid was. This is going to date me and make me sound really old, but I'm just 20. But the plate, if you remember, the bottom part of that pyramid was all grains and bread and things. Well, obviously, I ate all that. So we have it's a great conversation about portion and why we have a nation that's obese. So the pyramid, I'm so glad to see this back because I think it's more relevant for the kids to see. The plate, while it was a decent visual, the portions were sort of out of control like the old pyramid. But my dad said the old pyramid was correct because farmers worked every day out in the field, and they needed that extra bottom layer and nobody was overweight back in the day. So I guess there is some truth to that maybe, but just know that USDA has lots of great resources, and most of them are downloadable and they don't cost anything. And then I love this resource that it's called an Ag Mag, and this one is a pizza edition, and it gives you everything that's related to pizza, whether it's getting a rise out of your yeast or eating the pizza and all the components. We've made pizza gardens with all the ingredients of a pizza garden and a little bit of history about the pizza, and it's colorful. The kids love it. It reminds me of that Scholastic Weekly or the Weekly Reader, but it's a great resource to use in your classroom, and there is a copy of it, of one of the, there's bees. I have a honey one I'll share with you in a little bit, specifically on bees and honey. So I love the Ag Mags.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. You can actually go online to, I believe it's Indiana, Ag in the Classroom, and you can actually print off a PDF version of it. You can order I think it's $7 now to be shipped to you, but there's endless types of Ag Mags. Just a side note, Tennessee does not have them yet. We do have one that has been produced. It is not printed yet, but that can be a resource for you as soon as it is available. But this one is apples. You have food waste. You have dairy. I mean, it is endless. So a couple of years ago, we had just a little planter gardens for each classroom, and we grew pumpkins. It was honestly a great experience, even though some of them failed, because kids need to understand that everything that you plant doesn't grow. So luckily, my local Farm Bureau women's group helped us out. We were able to purchase little pumpkins to send home with all of the students. We were able to see what we produced, and then they added on to make certain that every student in my school was able to send home a pumpkin. And it really depended on how well the students and the teacher took care of their plants. We also had insects, so it was a really great lesson with how farmers have to take care of their crops to make them produce, and if they didn't, we know what happens. So the students were able to see, oh, well, Miss Williams' plants have insects on them, and tomorrow we came in and the insects had completely eaten the plant. So that was a great example, even though it failed, to let them see that that's reality. That's how things actually work. So Ag Mags, I love them. You can extend. A lot of schools use the Social Studies Weekly. I know our school system does, and this is the same type of format.
And it's funny you talk about failure because farmers have been doing productive struggle, and I know that's like a hatty word or some kind of scientist, and so my dad always says, well, farmers, I mean, whatever that fancy word you said, we always do that, and we're problem solvers because, you know, when you're in the middle of the field and your tractor breaks down, you're not going to say, oh, I got to stop everything and go find the Lowe's. Well, we live, 35, 40 minutes away from the nearest Lowe's or hardware store or whatever, so just fix it. Just do it. And so I think that's a great lesson for our kids, grit and determination and a productive struggle, and it's okay to fail. But our pumpkin story, so my kids came up with an idea of growing pumpkins to solve a fundraising issue at our school. And we had just a small raised bed at one of my schools, and pumpkins, I mean, that's just not, so I just let them, I said, you know what, you are so determined, you have done your research, you have the soil down, I mean, go for it. Let's see what happens. We had the most beautiful vines. Oh my goodness, they were beautiful. And the beautiful blossoms. Oh, they were so pretty. But you know what happens when you don't weed out stuff like that. So they didn't touch it. They said they're beautiful. It's all great. We had one pumpkin, and it was about that big, and they were heartbroken. They fought over who was going to take home the pumpkin, and Valerie, we did the same thing. I went to the local farmer's market, and the next day, magically, there were other pumpkins in the garden. These kids were too smart for me, though. They said, Miss Nicely, those pumpkins are not attached to the vine. Those did not happen. So it was a great lesson, like you said. And a couple kids cried because they were failures, but it's okay. It's okay to fail. Lord knows how many times have we all failed at something. But the garden is so unforgiving. And as my dad says, just plow it up and plant it again. So it's great. There are great life lessons in the garden. That's for sure.
Yes, there are for sure. And I think it would surprise you to know too. We had our planters out on the playground, and I had a student every day, and it was his choice. He wanted to take care of those pumpkins, and it was not a student that I would have chosen to have done that. And so every day he was like, Miss Teal, can I take care of those pumpkins? And I said, honey, if that's what you want to do during recess, that's your choice. And it was. He wanted to water them. He wanted to weed out the weeds. It was a really great experience for him, and I think we bonded over that too. And I was able to make that connection. He was a kind of a hard to reach student, and after that, I really felt like we were able to kind of make improvements in the classroom because of that. Wow. So another activity is your Farm to Fridge activity book. It is put out by SUDIA. SUDIA is the Southeast United Dairy Industry Association, and it's kind of a younger, it does have facts and coloring sheets as well, but I also wanted to go back to the teacher resource guide. In here, you will have connections that you can make. So, for example, did you know that the Tennessee Soybean Board, you can contact them and they will send you crayons that are made out of soybeans. So that type of information is in this teacher resource guide. And it's a great way for you to find out, is it going to cost me anything? What they can send me? Who do I contact? SUDIA is one of those people.
While we're getting our resource, here, Addie. So we have actually a gardener that's also my goddaughter, but she has been working in the garden all summer, and she is the Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Month, and she's drinking her chocolate milk, and she's very shy. But the reason I'm bringing Addie over for a second is because not only is she Youth of the Month and she's very shy, but she also she's clocking her volunteer hours in the garden. And what's great about this is Governor Lee and First Lady Maria Lee, Maria Lee really values volunteers, especially children. And so last summer, who did you meet last summer? We had a carnival at the governor's mansion. Addie was invited. Look, Addie. And she clocked about 75 hours of gardening work at our school last summer. And so she actually met the governor and his wife. The governor showed her how to throw the football. Now this year, from what I understand from Anne Marie with the governor's office, the carnival will not go on, but she's still clocking her hours. And I sent a message to the First Lady yesterday that Addie is the Youth of the Month for her gardening. You can go back and play your game activities. But anytime you can get kids involved, there are so many opportunities, especially in Tennessee, to highlight the work that our kids are doing. So I encourage you to look up, the First Lady of Tennessee's Service Learning Projects for Children. It's free. They get free recognition. I think Addie will probably get a certificate this year, but the carnival was a fabulous opportunity. Just to, she has a wonderful story about meeting our governor, and he showed her how to throw the football through a hoop. So it's a great thing, and I encourage you. Gardening is also a therapeutic way to get kids to talk about things. Our counselors use gardening, our teachers use gardening, but I've seen such growth in some of our hard to reach children, and some really great conversations have went on in the garden. Also, a lot of times when kids are in trouble chronically, I don't use gardening as a punishment, but a lot of times I go out to the garden and say, will you help me with this huge project? I don't know how to do it. And these kids become problem solvers, and it's just I can't say enough about all the different facets that you can use with gardening. we are also going to utilize gardening when we start back school on the 17th and bring the kids back that are coming back face to face. That will be one of our safe places to go out and do our outdoor classrooms, because we've added some picnic areas and a dry erase board near the gardening shed. And so that will be a safe place for our kids to socially distance out near the garden and actually look hands-on about, the leaves and the different parts of a plant, and relating that science curriculum to the garden in real time.
I think that's a great point. We were able to build an outdoor classroom area a couple of years ago at our school. We had a school board member who had passed away, had attended my school when he was a student, and loved our community, and it was for agriculture. So that kind of gave us a jumping point, applied for a few other grants. And so we have a decking structure that has enough seating for 2 classrooms. Of course, with socially distanced, it will have to spread them out a bit. It also has raised planters and a worm farm. And the worm farm was a part of a composting grant. And so the kids are able to take like banana peels and that kind of thing and go dig a hole and cover up the banana peel. And the kids, you would be surprised how many have never touched a worm. And so that's a really cool connection for them. And it gets conversations started and relationships built, because we know that if we can reach them on a personal level, we can take them places academically. And so through gardening, I think you're able to make those connections very easily. So I think we're down to the last 2 in our bucket here. And one of them is fun with the plant nutrition team. There's activities there. And there's a lot of materials I think you'll find that are plant-based that are able to extend lessons. So there's lots and lots of resources there. It's got facts in there. It's got different activities as well. And then you should also have the Ag in the Classroom Consortium. It has a lot of lessons on here. When we go talk about the online resources in a bit, that will give you more places to look for to help build your lessons. So I can pretty well promise that any lesson that you're going to teach in your classroom, you can tie in agriculture in some way, whether it be the literary aspect, whether it is an extension lesson, whether you are talking about the plant life cycle. So agriculture is part of everyday life, and it's not just 1 or 2 times a day. It's not every time you eat. It is every time that we breathe, we are dealing with agriculture. And it's very important, and that goes back to the 9 billion people or more by the year 2050. We have to start making decisions now for our world. And through agriculture, that's how it's going to happen.
So perfect. And I think we've taken deliberately a lot of time to go through this tub, and I think that this will help you when you go back. And if you don't have your tub, you can definitely look through it. This is it comes in a great little container, and it's just a great resource. So I think we should take about a 10-minute break, because I know you need to get up. I know I do. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back, and we'll start the fun part of the workshop, which are the activities. And I cannot wait to see some of the cool stuff that JoAnn and Valerie are going to show you. And let's take 10 minutes, and let's come back at 11:11, if that's okay with everybody.
Bags with dirt, kids just call it dirt, but it's the soil. And I learned that he sent the soil off, and when it came back, the chemist, he would send it to the lab, and the chemist would tell him exactly how much nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium he needed to put on that field to save him money, because we have to save money where we can. And it was the perfect example of precision ag. And so at the bottom of this activity, it kind of tells you to explain to your kids that farmers use fertilizers, but we don't just go to a field and put as much nitrogen as possible. That wouldn't even make sense financially. Or, we really care about the soil that we are planting our crops in to grow the most food and the best that we can. So, a farmer has to be pretty smart and study about these things. And so I think this just does a good job of educating the kids that it's not dirt. it's actually soil. And so anyway, your materials that you'll need for this activity are instant pudding. Obviously, it kind of talks about making it, but we just get the already made at Walmart. So if you have, 25 kids, you can make it. You can go exactly by the recipe, but you can also already buy the pre-made, which is a little bit easier. We kind of like to skip some steps if we can, keep it simple. But what you're going to do is, I'll just go ahead and show you. I already have mine made. And you're going to crumble up some vanilla wafers. You're going to need vanilla wafers, chocolate pudding, and crumbled up Oreos, okay? So this is just a symbol of the bedrock, or the first layer of soil is the bedrock or the parent material. And these are vanilla wafers, yum. Okay, but they're very light. They're not very rich in color. Exactly, right? Now, then your next layer is going to be your subsoil, which is going to demonstrate that's your pudding layer. And it's going to show how that's where the plant root normally goes to get the water and nutrients that it needs. But then the most important and most vital soil is your topsoil. And it's the Oreos are crumbled up, and it has that organic matter. And we need the worms and insects and bugs and things to get in there and mull that around. And that's where the plants are going to receive most of their nutrients. And you can also tie in this, the plant nutrient team. And it talks about, the soil sometimes need vitamins. Kids can understand that. You don't have to get all above their head and everything. But this would be a great resource to parent with this. But to grow the tallest and the strongest, and this explains what the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, how you can tell which plants need more of which fertilizer, okay, and how we use those as farmers. Also, you can change up this activity, anything with just a little variation of color. You can get very creative and do this with lots of different resources. You can use cereal. You wanted to do like a honeycomb or a Cocoa Puffs, and then pour the milk, a little bit of milk, to kind of show how the water filtrates through the soil. Another activity that I saw that was pretty interesting, that the same concept involved, you make a Play-Doh mold with 3 different colors, and then you use a straw, which is a pretty simple example of the soil samples that the farmers actually do. And it shows you, the layers of the soil, and maybe you're low on topsoil. And also explain that as agriculturalists and as farmers, we use no-till farming to sustain our soils and keep that topsoil as much as we can. Talk about erosion and all those kinds of things. So this is the mud pies activity in your alphabet soup book. You can also throw in a gummy worm if you want to get creative with it.